Good evening and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lynette Owens, and I am the founder and global director of Trend Micro's Internet Safety for Kids and Families program. I would like to welcome everybody who has made time out of their evening to join us tonight. For those of you who require translation services into Spanish, please select the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and select the Spanish option. And you will be hearing from our interpreter, Gigi, who is with us tonight. A couple of other things before we get started. I welcome everybody to this evening's event, which is a program we've had in place together with PTO Today for more than 10 years now. It is a service that we feel is really important, and even more so now during the pandemic when it seems like all of our time is spent online. I have been doing this work myself for almost 13 years now. I have two teenagers, a 17 and a 14-year-old. And tonight I hope to share a lot of what we've learned over the years with this program, and simply by speaking with parents like you and your families over the course of that time. I encourage you to use the chat function to converse with each other, but if you have specific questions, please use the Q&A function, and we will pause during moments through the evening and certainly at the end to make sure we answer all questions. So I also want to welcome so many of you from multiple places in the United States. Because of tonight's event time zone, most of you are from the East or Central time zones, and we also offer events in the West and Mountain time zones as well. But tonight it looks like most of you are from the East, so welcome. I am actually dialing in from the Boston, Massachusetts area. And it's a little bit colder here, possibly, than where some of you are. So again, if anyone who's just joined late requires to listen in Spanish, or others could support the families in your community, please have them select the globe icon at the bottom of the screen and choose Spanish as their option. Please use the Q&A function. If you have questions throughout, we will take moments to pause and answer them. If you're listening in Spanish, go ahead and submit your question in Spanish, and Gigi will help me help translate those for me so I can answer them. We have a couple of polls coming up, so please participate in them. And finally, at the end, there'll be a survey evaluation for you to fill out optionally if you want to submit your email address, because we are giving away a few prizes. Okay. Now, I would like to get to know you a little bit better. So if you could use the polling function, please answer this question. How old is your oldest child? Are they 5 years or younger, 6 to 10, 11 to 14, or older, 15 or older? How old is your oldest child? And as I said, mine is 17, but it looks like as people are answering, we'll just give it a couple more seconds. Please go ahead and use the polling. It looks like there's one age group that is winning, I suppose you might say, or let's say highly overrepresented tonight. So I'm just going to end that polling, and it looks like most of you have an oldest child in the 6 to 10 year age range, and then another bunch of you the next group over that, which is 11 to 14, and after that, 15 and older. So I know a couple of you have younger ones, but tonight I think we're going to cover issues that really hit in those age range, that sweet spot between 6 and 14, when most of the challenges with technology and kids tend to happen. So another question I'd love to know is how are your kids actually going back to school? So are they remote or homeschooling, hybrid in some form or fashion, or fully, excuse me, fully in person? So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. Which form are your children in school right now? Remote, hybrid, or in person? And I can tell you, my kids are actually attending in a hybrid fashion. So 1 week, half the school goes in 5 days a week. Then the following week, they alternate. And so every other week they're in school and every other week they're at home. They decided to do it by last name. So A through L and M through Z, which is an interesting model. Some schools do it by age instead. So I'm just going to stop the polling here. It looks like most of you are in person, followed closely by remote only. So very interesting. And the data definitely shows that in the US, it's all over the map. Interestingly enough, the largest majority of school in the United States is going hybrid, the largest majority, around 56% of you in the country are going remote. So yes, so if you're just joining us, I see some people have just joined. Please use the chat to just, connect with each other. I showed you earlier, we have 8 different school districts represented tonight across 5 or 6 different states. So welcome everybody. And please use the Q&A to go ahead and submit your questions. So this might have been comments that you heard in your house over the last year. Maybe you still hear some of this in your house now. But one thing is certain, we have gotten through almost a year of this challenging period. And for better or worse, we have figured out how to get through it. Somehow you've figured out a balance between being at home or not, being online or not, saying yes to more screen time or a new app or a new device or not. And I applaud everybody for getting to this point, because we certainly will be talking about this forever, and our children will probably remember it too. But I think I want to say one thing to you, that at some point in 2021, if hopefully sooner rather than later, we are going to see the glimpses of what life on the other side is going to look like. And when all of this landed upon us, we weren't ready. We weren't expecting it. Who was? So it was thrust upon us, and we figured out how to manage technology and our kids. And I know it's still a struggle. It can still be very challenging. But we also know is that at some point this will end. And I just ask you all to think about, you might as well do it now. Don't wait until the end. What parts of how you've adjusted to life, what parts of how you've decided your children's and your own relationship to technology and the internet, what parts of it will you keep when this is over? And what parts will you say goodbye and be glad to say goodbye to? Were Zoom gatherings with people far away something you were doing before this year? And if not, will you continue those afterwards? And were new kinds of services or apps or devices something you introduced to your children because you had to? Are those things you will still allow them to use, or do you want to peel it back? And was there something about how school shifted that, was there anything good that came out of it? I know that there are children who actually have thrived in remote settings, especially those who are introverted or pretty self-directed, and others who did not. What did we learn, and what will we take after this is over? And I just want to put that out there now, because it will still be like this for a while. But I think it never hurts to reflect and be ready for when that moment comes. What parts will you keep, and what parts will you say goodbye to? All right. So the thing is, a lot did change over this past year. Maybe your network at home was completely clogged and everyone was slowing it down. Or as the kids like to say, everything is laggy, as they like to say. Or you just didn't have a moment's peace and privacy was elusive. Or you just said yes to more screen time, and you thought every day, I must be a bad parent, I feel really guilty about it, but I'd rather they were home and safe rather than outside the house. Whatever your reasons, a lot of things changed. Whatever your experience was, a lot of things changed, but some things did not. What did not change is that our children still need lots of guidance from us, because the risks to them and the internet are still there. Risks of, well, overuse now, but all the other risks of coming into contact with people they don't know, and shouldn't be engaging with, or content that's not appropriate for their age. Or maybe there were instances of unkindness and bullying. Those who are starting to use social media might have started to feel those pangs of anxiety as you scroll through feeds and see other people's lives as if theirs were so much better than your own. So the risks are definitely still there, but so are the benefits. The benefits to using technology to learn new things, to connect with people you couldn't otherwise connect with, and even to do things together as a family. So that is why good digital citizenship is still something we need to not only teach our children, but also role model for them. And what do we mean by that? Well, we absolutely need to teach our children what the risks are and how to avoid them. Safety and security is an important part of being a great digital citizen, but so is digital literacy. How do I turn on privacy settings? And why is it important that I do that? And how do I find information on the internet that is credible, that I can use in my homework, and that is not discredited or harmful for me to believe? It includes how we behave towards each other and how it benefits the community around us, or even oneself. How do I behave? And finally, it's not just a list of things that our children should not do. It is equally important to teach them, to role model the ways in which we should be using the internet, not just a list of what not to do. What should they do and what should they not do? There should be a balance. So how do we help them do that? I'm just going to pause for a minute. There's a question here. Is there a recording available? This is being recorded, and it will be made available to those communities that have attended this evening's event. We're not widely making it available because we have another event coming up at the end of the month, and 2 every month, actually, until the end of May for now. So I hope that answers the question. And finally, is there a way to sign in? There isn't currently a way. We purposely did not make registration required. We wanted to make it really easy for people to attend these. And so if you need something other than, if there's something in particular you need, I'll give you my email address at the end, and we can talk about whatever it was that you needed from the sign-in. Okay. Again, I encourage everyone to submit your questions through the Q&A. So how do we talk about digital citizenship? Well, we break it up into 4 categories. The first is about being online, but while they're there and while we're there, how are we teaching them to be safe, to be kind, and to be savvy? What do we mean by these? Well, being online is really a big part of what you need to do as parents. How are you setting up the environment in your home so that they can be set up in a positive, safe, and productive way? How are you setting the rules, and what kind of example are you setting for them? When we talk about being safe, what we mean is, how do you protect your privacy, your personal information, and then also your physical self, your physical well-being? On kindness, this is not just about being nice to other people and respecting others. This is also about teaching kids to direct some of that kindness towards themselves. And finally, on being savvy, how are we encouraging good habits and good uses of the internet? It's not the list of what not to do, it's the list of what you should do with technology. So on setting up the environment, I won't belabor this one too much because, again, so many of you have already figured out your equilibrium, how to manage through this period of time. But I think that I just want to highlight a couple of things on this, that if you're not already doing it, everybody needs to be able to work. If they're going to remote school, they do need their spaces of privacy just as you would for work. But on the eyes, this is one that I think a lot of people overlook. So having the right type of lighting, especially if they're going to be staring at screens. But I'm a big fan of the 30-30-30 rule. And in fact, let's try and hold ourselves accountable to this one. The 30-30-30 rule is every 30 minutes, if you're working on screens, look away for about 30 feet away for 30 seconds, away from the screen for 30 seconds to a distance of about 30 feet. So that is the 30-30-30 rule. And in a previous event that I did last fall, a parent actually said they went on Amazon and you can get packages that are not too expensive, in packages of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 blue light glasses. So they're not prescription. They look nice, and all they do is help to filter the blue light from the screens if they're on it a lot. So it's just a suggestion, not a requirement. But if you're on screens a lot, you should consider that, or at a minimum, 30-30-30. Posture, getting up and moving. I think these are all important things too, but sometimes we overlook them. Another part of setting up the environment is about your network. Now, again, we've all been in this situation for a while, but I hope that you'll find some of these reminders or some of this information helpful to you and your family. And that first is around the router. So oftentimes people buy a router and they actually never change the password after they buy it. So I highly recommend that you change the password to the router with some frequency, just as you would with Facebook or any other app or email service that you might use. It is a good idea to do that. The second is to consider separating the network. So some of routers allow you to have the main stuff, a main network, and a guest network. And we recommend that the devices that don't have sensitive information on it, like a child's iPad or an e-reader or a gaming device maybe, on the guest network, and then your work computer or the computer that holds all your family photos or whatever's really sensitive information on the main network. And the reason for this is, if the child's device or whatever device is on the guest network becomes compromised in any way, it will be separated from the devices on the main network. The third thing is maybe again, you've already been using something like this, but if people have to spread out in the house, getting a Wi-Fi extender so that the Wi-Fi is good in many parts of the house. And then having a conversation at the beginning of the day and saying, when do you need to be online? When do you need to be online? If there's any way that you can calibrate your schedule so you're not all on it at the same time, it will lessen the headaches. It's definitely something I have had to do with my family. In fact, tonight was one of those nights. And let's see. On securing, now that you've done all of that, now let's talk about just locking things down and securing things. And I can't say this or stress this enough, that every device, including phones, every device that connects to the internet should have security software. And I can tell you, since Trend Micro is a security software company, even though I'm not an engineer, but have worked at Trend for 20 years, and that is, during this pandemic, we have seen a rise in activity by cyber criminals trying to fool you in all kinds of ways. They're trying to fool your children in all kinds of ways, to click, download, give up personal information in some way, shape, or form. But if you have security software, then many times you will be blocked from clicking on a link, or protected from receiving emails that are suspicious, and so on. So make sure that you consider that. Again, Trend has a product, but go to cnet.com, cnet.com, and look for the top 10 of any technology. Look for the top 10 security software products out there, and you will find great options for that. Once you do install it, make sure the firewall is on, because this is sort of protecting you from trusted versus untrusted networks. Using strong passwords, turning on what is sometimes called multi-factor authentication, but on apps like Facebook or Instagram, and I think even TikTok, it's called two-step authentication. What this means is you're adding a second lock beyond just a password. And you probably have this on, but if you don't, go into Facebook tonight, go into Twitter, whatever you're using for social media, talk to your kids about it as well, and turn this on. It's typically under the privacy security settings, and it requires you to enter another piece of information beyond the password. So oftentimes it asks you to provide a cell phone number, because it's going to text you a code. So you sign in with a password, then you get the text, then you sign in with that code, and that is the 2 steps. So please turn that on. It's much better today than it was 5 or 6 years ago. A lot of apps did not even have 2-step authentication, but it's become more commonplace. So please take advantage of it. Finally, this may not be as pertinent now that we are mostly staying home and not sort of traveling everywhere. But if you are traveling, or if you're connecting to the internet outside your home, always, always, always use a virtual private network. That is in addition to having security software, because that ensures that whatever you're sending, whether it's personal information or a credit card or email address, whatever, as it travels between your secure device and the site or app that is on the other end, that in its travels, it will also be protected. That is what that private network will do for you. I'm going to pause. We've got quite a few questions here. Let's see. So about blue light glasses, yes, no, they don't have to be prescribed at all. I mean, it's kind of like sunglasses, basically. And you'll find a lot of them on Amazon. Some of them aren't really too expensive. You could also just buy one for you, try it out, and see if you think your children should have it too. Or maybe you just want to treat yourself to it for now. All right. moving forward here. Other things you can do as you set up your environment is make sure you update. So, we talk about Tuesday night updates. That's mostly around big company software like Microsoft or some of those bigger enterprise type of software packages. But when it comes to apps, on your phone or your kids' devices, updates can come at any time. One thing we've noticed during the pandemic is that because more people are using them more of the time, these updates are coming fast and furiously. Sometimes they're only there to improve something about the app, some kind of feature or usability, or just make it better. But many times the update is there to secure or close up a security vulnerability. So make sure that your children's devices and your own, that you are updating apps constantly, because a lot of those updates include security fixes. One thing I don't advise if you use your phone a lot is, if you can avoid setting the updates to automatic, it's a good idea, because it actually drains the battery quite quickly. So my recommendation is, at night before you go to bed, manually say update all, and then and make sure it's plugged in, so that while it's doing all of that updating, your battery won't be drained and you won't care, because you're going to bed anyway. So that's my recommendation. But please make sure that you do update. Okay. Second thing is about strong passwords. And I think a lot of us already know, well, we should make them strong and we should change them often. But for those of you with younger kids, it's not a bad idea to start practicing developing good, strong passwords. And one trick that your kids might like as a way of creating strong passwords is actually to create a sentence and just use the first letter of each word in the sentence as your password. So you see the example here, might need to buy more toilet paper soon. Adding numbers and special characters also strengthens the password, but really the longer the password, the stronger it is. Okay. All right. Finally, just backing up and storing. If you use a cloud service like Apple Cloud or Google storage to back up your photos, back up your files, that's fine. If you can spring for it, I actually recommend doing both cloud service as well as a removable hard drive, something you just plug in to the computer. And when you do that, I would never store that device at the same place as where your laptop is, for example, so that if either one was ever damaged or stolen or whatever, they were not together. Now, I want to talk about tech tools, specifically for parents, because these have gotten so much better over the last 3 years, I would say, or less. And these are tools that can help you filter age-inappropriate content, especially for those younger ones, limit in-app purchasing, manage the amount of time they're spending on a particular app or in general on the internet, and also watch or monitor what it is they're doing and spending time on while they're online. And these tools are settings that you don't necessarily even have to pay any extra money for. They can be in the router, in devices like Xboxes or iPads or mobile phones. Your ISP, like Verizon or Comcast, whoever it is you use, might offer these kinds of services, but they typically charge extra. If you have security software already installed on devices, you find it under settings called parental controls. And then what's gotten much better over the last year are the settings that sit right in the apps themselves. right, in the apps themselves. And I'm going to share an example of it for you in a second. So I don't know how many of you, go ahead and put it in the chat, using screen time, iOS screen time. Okay. Apple introduced this a couple of, let's see, it's just probably almost 2 years now, I think, maybe. Been a little bit now, but a lot of people don't know about it. But this enables you to manage any other devices under your Apple account, like your children's, for example, and limit things like how much time they're on it, also what kinds of content they're allowed to see, and so on. So here you can see this is actually my phone for those of you who have iPhones or Apple devices, and you see that's my 2 children's accounts set up under my Apple account. Even children under 13 can have an Apple account set up by you for this. And once you select one of the child's names, you can see, those weekly reports you get on Sundays, the ones that show up on a Sunday morning and make you feel really guilty about how much time you were spending that week on your phone. But you can see the same with your kids. You can see exactly how much time they were on social media, gaming. You can see the specific apps too. And you can also restrict the kinds of apps that they're allowed to download. So if it's for age 13 and above, and you don't want them downloading that kind of stuff, you can restrict it here too. So that's for anyone who's using it, and you really like it, please go ahead and share that in the chat. The other is a feature that TikTok introduced about a year, just a little less than a year ago. It was actually last April. It's called TikTok Family Pairing. Okay, for those of you, how many of you have kids using TikTok now? Or how many of you have kids who are begging to have TikTok and you're not ready for them to do that, right? This is a way for you to ease them and you into using TikTok. And here's how it works. It requires a device that they might be using and a device that you use to each download TikTok. Now, it doesn't mean that you as the parent need to use TikTok all that much, but what you can do is, and what you need to do is, you go to a setting called digital well-being in TikTok, and you select family pairing. And once you select it, it's now going to ask you to identify, is this the phone of the parent or is this the phone of the child? And so you do it either of both of them at that step. Now, as the parent, what you are able to do is limit how much time they're actually going to be using it from your phone. You can do it. You can limit it, the kinds of content they're actually going to see when they're looking at the different TikToks. I worried about TikTok just like I did with YouTube, because it auto plays the next video, and sometimes you have no idea what's about to come up. This feature does pretty well. I did test it, and what I mostly saw was pretty innocuous stuff. Animals, senior citizens dancing. I mean, things that are really fine, especially for the younger kids. So that is a way for you to ease yourself and your child into the TikTok experience. And once they're old enough, and once you feel that they're comfortable or responsible enough and you're comfortable with it, you can turn off family pairing. The other thing that TikTok just announced last month, they sent this information to me last month at end of January. By default, any child under the age of 16 will automatically have all of the privacy settings on. Believe it or not, it wasn't even on by default before now. And Instagram doesn't, and Snapchat doesn't. These are things you have to go in there and set after you download. So I do applaud TikTok. They're not perfect. None of these apps are, but I do applaud them for learning from the mistakes of their predecessors. I had a question from a parent just last month ask me, do you mean to tell me that um, TikTok is asking for a birth date when you sign up for it? The answer is yes. They do ask for a birth date. They do. So that's how they know the age. Is it a perfect way of limiting access? Not necessarily, because we can always give it a different birth date. But what my recommendation is to you as parents, especially with younger kids, is be in control from the beginning. Use family pairing. You set it up in a way where from the very beginning, you're having conversations about, what you're okay with and how much time they're allowed to use it and so on until they're ready, and then you can pull back. When we talk about setting rules, we're really just talking about a few things here. The first is, what are they allowed to use? And very often, kids will come to parents and say, hey, can I download this app? Can I get this new game? The big one last year was Among Us. Anybody play Among Us out there? If you do, go ahead and put it in the chat. It's fun, but it's got a lot of holes in terms of privacy and security, but I get it. I get why it's fun. And I assume nobody here is the imposter, by the way. So yes, I know everybody likes that. So what are they allowed to use? And if you're not sure, if it's something you haven't heard about before, I recommend two things. Number one, just do a little homework. If it's an app that has not been reviewed a lot, or you look in the App Store and it's only had 4 or 5 reviews and all of them are 5 stars, that's a little, I would hold off a little bit until you know more, because a lot of these apps are free. And we'll talk a little bit in a little bit about what that means when they're free. And it often means they're collecting a lot of other stuff if they're free. Okay, so the other thing you can do is go to Common Sense Media. CommonSenseMedia.org does great reviews of apps, games, websites. They even do movies, television shows, especially if you have kids that are different ages and you can never agree on what movie to watch because you have so many kids that are different ages. So yes, the website is commonsensemedia.org, and I've just put it into the chat there. Yeah, they have great reviews, and you can even hear, parents actually give you their opinions, as do kids. So it's interesting when you see different points of view about a game or an app or even a movie. So now you've decided what they're allowed to use. You decide when and for how long they're allowed to use it. And I'm going to go through an exercise called the 24-hour exercise in a minute to help you consider screen time and how to strike a good balance with your kids online. Where are they allowed to use it? During the pandemic, most people aren't really going all over the place. They're at home. But before the pandemic, if your child is going over to somebody else's house and you have different rules about the kinds of, let's say, video games they're allowed to play, and then the family whose house your child is going to, it's important to be upfront and say, we don't allow first-person shooter games right now, it's just too young. Or, the same would be true of if they're watching movies and you're not okay with the kinds of movies yet, they're not old enough for it. Make sure you have those conversations up front so that you're not stuck in a situation where you find out later and then it's kind of awkward for everybody. With whom are they allowed to connect with online? I think, now more than ever, we should be very actively involved, understanding who our children are engaging with, whether it's on gaming or social networks. And frankly, a lot of games are social now. So as they're the younger ones, it's really best to stay with those you know and those they know. And then as they get older, you can expand that. So let's talk about the 24-hour exercise. The 24-hour exercise, this comes from the Center on Media and Child Health, and we are big proponents of this concept and this practice because I think it helps children prioritize what they're doing with their time. But I think also in a pandemic, it helps us as parents come to some ease and understanding as well, because this is a difficult time. And we've chosen to keep them home rather than out there, chosen to keep them home in our community and our family safe. So what you can do with your kids is actually, make a circle, a pie chart with 24 slices on it, or just have them write it down or write it down for them and have a conversation to say, okay, how many hours, a day has 24 hours. How many hours in a day do you spend or did you spend doing the things that support your physical health? So how much time sleeping, having or helping to prepare meals, exercising, going for a walk, riding your bike, being outside, all those things, playing sports. How many hours? On top of that, how many hours have you spent to support yourself as a learner? So whether it's being in school in person or being in school in remote situation, doing homework, reading, maybe practicing a hobby or learning a new skill. Let's say it's an instrument or artwork or whatever it is. All of these things that support you as a learner. Okay, on top of that, how much time in the day are you spending to support the relationships that are important for you, whether it's family time, time with friends or neighbors in hopefully a safe, socially distant manner? Now you add all of those up. What is left? Well, if you think about these three areas, these are all really important things for them. And if they're doing a lot of these things and and um, and it's taking up a lot of the time, it helps a child think about, okay, first, have I done everything, all those things that are good for me? But you as a parent realize, hey, if they're doing all of those things, then it's okay with the time left over to use screens. Now, let's say you do the math and the time left over equals 6 hours or 4 hours even, or whatever, some bigger number. It does not mean that they need to use screens that entire time. It doesn't. That is where your rules about how long, when, and what they're allowed to use comes into play. Your rules and the tools that we talked about, the tools that help you limit, whether it's in TikTok, whether it's using iOS screen time, they have those kinds of limits in the parental controls of security software. There's a lot of tools out there that you can use to help you manage this time left over so not all of it is on screens. But other things you can do with this time left over is, think about creating a menu or a box of options. Some parents, you sort of write ideas. The child can actually help write ideas, fold it up in a piece of paper, put it in a box, and they pick out of there what they're allowed to do during that free time. Some of it could be screens, and some of it might not. That's completely up to you. But we like to help people think about screen time in the context of an entire day and in the context of all of the other activities that are really important for them and their physical health, their abilities as students and their needs as students, and their relationships with people that are important in their lives. Okay. Let's see. Finally, on setting the example, I think it goes without saying, what rules do you have for yourself? If you're going to be setting rules with your kids, and go ahead and share that. What are ways that you stop your work day if you're working from home? How do you stop your work day and then begin home time? Do you set an alarm? Do you, do you have your work somewhere else in the house and then you leave that room? What are some of the rules do you have for yourself? Do you not charge your phone next to your bed at night? That's something I should do. I don't do right now. But what rules do you have for yourself? And how do you actually set good examples for your kids? I know for me, I don't actually try to have my phone at the dinner table, but if I do, I try to put it face down if possible. Have not always been great about that, but that's something I try to role model, not even have the phone there in the first place. Um, and thank you for being honest, those of you who are commenting in the chat. Thank you for being honest. Setting alarm is a great way, and yeah, if you're not doing what you expect them to do, it's going to be harder to enforce your rules. So hey, you can do that starting today. It's never too late. You can still do that now. Absolutely. And finally, how have you encouraged, either before the pandemic, during the pandemic, or even after the pandemic, time together, whether it's using technology or not? The first, I think in the month of March or April, Disney Plus signed up millions of new people. And it's really quite amazing because in our house, it led to a regular night where we were watching something together, or Netflix. Maybe some people did it with Netflix. Do you have a movie night? Is that something you do? Do you do a Zoom gathering with relatives from far away on a regular basis? These might be some of those things you'll hold on to after the pandemic is over. Okay. On being safe. I think it goes without saying that privacy settings it's just, you should use them, right? It's just a pretty basic thing. And, the example I'm showing you here, anybody know Fortnite? Anybody's kids love playing Fortnite? My son did until he got too old for it. And now he doesn't. But it was so huge when he was a couple years younger now. So any fans of Fortnite out there? Yep. Awesome. Other one now, I think for the older ones, Call of Duty. For the younger ones, it's still Minecraft, Roblox, and so on. Make sure you're going in there and taking a look at their privacy settings. I can tell you that, first of all, it's not on by default for Fortnite. As we talked about before, a lot of these apps and games don't set it by default, meaning what they're doing is public, or anyone can connect with them and ask them to play. So go in there, spend some time, everything that your kids are using, try and spend some time, or actually better yet, do it with them. Have them find it. Have them find it and tell you where it is. Because in the case of Fortnite, when you go there, you see the options are public, friends only, or private. And public means it could be anyone. So make sure you spend some time doing that. But here's the thing about privacy settings. And I know it seems that there might be some younger people listening tonight. So this is also something you should pay very close attention to if you're out there, if there are any students out there, okay? Privacy settings are great for protecting us from people we don't know, okay? But I ask you this question. Is TikTok free? Is Facebook free? Is Roblox free unless you buy Robux, right? If you don't have Robux, can you play Roblox without buying Robux? Can you play Fortnite without buying V-Bucks? When you download these apps, are they free? And the reason I bring that up is because usually when we download an app, there's this whole moment where a whole bunch of text, like Instagram, let's say, all this text comes up. and we don't read it. We just skip right over it and we hit I accept. But what's interesting is in that text, on almost every app that is free, especially those that have a social nature to them. It doesn't have to be just a social media app. It could be a gaming app that has social connections like Roblox. There's a clause in there that's written in legal language, but what it basically says is everything you do online, everything you post, it all belongs to you. But we, the company who made the app, have the right to use it whenever, wherever, forever. It's not those words, but that's actually what it says. So when you hit I accept, that is what you're accepting. And when you use privacy settings, that protects you, again, from the people out there you don't know, but there is no privacy between you and the company who made that app or that game. So when we tell people, nothing you ever do online is private, this is why. Because as soon as you take that action, it's being tracked by that company. And they store it somewhere. And hopefully they keep it really secure and no one hacks that. But we know that's not always the case. So for the young people out there, when we say nothing you ever do on the internet is private, it's not because we're just trying to scare you. It's just not how the internet works. And as soon as you post something or do something, the company stores it. If it's a photo, they also replicate it on other servers so that people elsewhere could access it if you choose to share it with people elsewhere. And all of a sudden, there are many, many copies of it. And so that's why it's not truly private. And this is one of the most important things that you as parents can have conversations about with your kids when it comes to privacy. It is important, and we'll talk a little bit about another reason why it's important towards the end. Okay, when it comes to cyber criminals, well, they're not necessarily targeting your kids because they don't necessarily have the kind of money that these criminals are looking for. But the criminals are in places where your children are going online, because where the people go, they go. Where would they find them? Well, sometimes it's just right in a search result. Somewhere, usually, especially now during a pandemic, let's say everybody's looking for information about vaccines. And sometimes you will find when you search on a search engine, one of those links is actually not really legit. If you clicked on it, you think you're going to a real website, but simply by clicking on it, you've downloaded what's called malware, malicious software that could be there trying to watch what you're doing and waiting until you go to a bank site and enter a password, or a shopping site and enter a credit card number or whatever. So that's why having security software, for the most part, if you just have security software, you and your children will be protected from any of these kinds of threats, because you would not even be able to click in the first place. It will block you from doing that. The second thing, and I've done many sessions with students, even as young as first grade, and I've asked them, have you ever seen something really suspicious? Like, you ever get a pop-up or a text that just look really suspicious? Yes, usually they'll say. And what did you do? Well, they usually say they X out of it, because X is a verb now, or they just ignored it. So the second thing you can do, in addition to having security software, is just encourage your kids to trust their instincts on these things, because they have them. You've been talking to them for so long about what you can trust and who you can trust and not. So encourage those instincts. And if they ever feel like, I accidentally clicked on something, I feel really bad. I don't know if I did something bad to the computer, mom and dad. Make sure they can come to you about it. Always make sure that your child has a place to turn for anything that might be troubling them about their experiences on the internet. So I want to do another poll here. Do any of your kids own a cell phone? Do any of your kids have their own cell phone? Yes, no, not yet, but soon, and not for a few more years. Yes, no, not yet, but soon, and not for a few more years. Eventually, all of you will say yes, but maybe not for a while. Eventually, you will all be in the yes category. And it's a big day when you buy the first phone for the first child. So what we did is we went with a prepaid AT&T Go phone. We brought our child to go buy it with us so they could hear the conversation with the salesperson about what that meant. And we only put so much money in it at a time. And so what this did was help our child really. I'm going to end the polling here now and share the results. So a lot of you said yes, and then a lot of you said no too. But like I said, eventually you will all be in the yes category. But anyway, I was saying with the first phone, consider a prepaid option and limit the number of people whose numbers are in there, and only do internet connection, limited apps while they're at home on Wi-Fi. But if they're out of your home, let's say they can only text a few people for emergencies. As they got older, the circle widened, the address book got bigger, and we were okay with it because each time they asked to add, can I add this person? Can I add this person? Anything that helps you continuously have conversations is a good thing, and then they were able to get the old smartphones that mom and dad no longer needed. We've never actually bought our kid a new smartphone. We've just passed down ours. And it's fine. It's worked out great. It's really expensive. And I tell them I never had anything that expensive my whole entire childhood. I had an Atari, though, and ColecoVision, I think, and a Nintendo. Those are probably the most expensive things I ever got to play with technology when I was a kid. Okay. The reason I bring up the phone is because there's one thing about the phone that kids love more than anything, and that is the camera. So a couple of things about the camera. And kids, if you're out there listening to, have fun with it. It's great. If you're sort of using TikTok now or eventually, you can do things with that camera totally for fun. Do not ever feel pressured to use that camera to take photos of yourself that you would not want the whole world to see. And I think many of you know what I'm talking about. And the reason is this. First, you should never feel pressure to do that at all. And secondly, okay, this is technology we're talking about. And we talked about privacy or what's not private in the past. Even if you take the photo and never send it, the fact that it's sitting on here and it's being backed up onto a service like, let's say, iCloud or some other cloud service has already put yourself at risk, because it's the mere existence of it here and the fact that it be backed up in transit. If someone were able to hack the service where it's being backed up to, now it's out there, right? So I really, really encourage you to talk to your kids about the positive and good uses of the camera, and to not ever feel pressured or persuaded or even tempted to take those kinds of photos. The second reason I bring it up is because we do work very closely with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and there has been a rise in cases of self-produced images like this. And the problem with it is there are people out there who might pretend to be a different age than they are, asking for that kind of photo. And maybe it's kind of innocent in the beginning, but they gain their trust and they ask them for another and another, until it's the kind of photo that you don't want getting out there. And what happens is those people who you thought were somebody and aren't who you thought they were will put you under some kind of pressure and they'll say, if you don't send me another one, I'm going to blast this out there to the world. And so we really want to make sure that when we give our kids the phone for the first time, that we encourage positive uses of the camera, but we discourage those kinds of imagery. Again, can take great photos. We do it all the time of our pets, of each other, and so on. There's no problem. There's no reason why not to do that. But getting yourself into a situation where the public can see it or someone can extort you is not where you want to be. I was asked a question long ago, many years ago now, by a father who said, my son is a good kid. And I mean, what would happen though? He didn't do anything. What if someone sent him? What if another kid in his class sent him one of those photos? What should I do? The phone service is under my name, even though it's his phone. What should I do? And I thought it was a great question. I like to share it with parents every time I can. And the advice that I have for you is this. This is also the same advice that many law enforcement organizations have said too. And that is, if your child ever receives one of those images, do not send it on to anyone else. Encourage your child to come to you and let you know about it, and then delete it, and then tell someone about it. So whether that means reporting it to the school because it's something going around in the school, or if you know the family of the person who sent it, you could potentially have a conversation with them about it if it's comfortable. But if it's not, you could either report it to the school or to authorities if you feel that it's sort of crossing that boundary. And this is the reason why. You never know if that photo was also sent to other people. And by reporting it, you can initiate an investigation. And it would be very, very easy for the people investigating to know that A, your child received the image, and B, whether you sent it on or not. So you don't even have to have it on the phone anymore, because you don't want to be liable or in trouble for possession of what's technically illegal content, possession of it or distribution of it. So that is my advice of it. I don't think it'll happen to any of you, but I thought that was a really good question a parent asked long ago that I wanted to share. Finally, in terms of keeping safe, again, we talked about gaming. They're so social now, and spend some time understanding what the levers are for you to limit who they are connecting with. Two other things about games. I'm a big fan of games that have time limits. There are games like Fortnite that can go on and on and on and on, or Minecraft also that can go on and on and on and never end. Now, Fortnite Battle Royale has an end when there's finally a winner, okay? But I'm talking about games like FIFA or NFL Madden or NBA 2K21, or any of you play Rocket League? Not many Rocket League fans. That has a timer as well. And that helps you not only manage screen time, but the other thing I really liked about Rocket League is you could actually be playing with people you don't know, but the way in which you communicate, Rocket League actually developed pre-canned text, not open free text. When you play Among Us with other strangers, you can see that the text chat is anyone could say anything. And I've played it and I've seen some pretty inappropriate stuff. But Rocket League actually, you just pick, hey, great shot, or hey, next time try again. And so, especially for your younger kids, for those of you with the 6 to 10-year-olds, think about games in that context and what they're really ready for. And if you struggle with getting your kid to stop playing a game, think about games that are timed. It might help you. Being kind, I think there's some obvious stuff here. You should do it to others. You should treat others with respect and kindness because it's the right thing to do, yes. But as we already talked about on the internet, there's a permanence here. It will reflect on you. So anything you're writing or saying online is like writing with a Sharpie on a billboard at the highway that everyone can see. What do you want? What do you want your actions online to say about you? And it's important also with kindness that we respect other people's privacy. So for those of you who are thinking of getting a phone for your child for the first time, they start taking group selfies and things like that. Teach them to have conversations with their friends to say, hey, before I ever, I'm going to check with you before I post this. Are you okay with it? Are you okay with it? Because it turns out that a lot of drama that's been happening in middle schools, especially, is when someone took a photo, these kids are on social media for the first time, and they love how they look, but the other people don't look so great, and those other people get really upset about it. And before you know it, they're talking about each other behind the back, and then it turns into some kind of drama. And I think with good friends, encourage your kids to say, ask them before you post something with them in it. Has anyone ever had this situation with your own family members? Have you had those kinds of conversations with your own family members who are posting photos that maybe you weren't so happy about? Yeah, it's happened. It's happened to us, and we have had to say, in the future, can you please ask us before you post photos of our kids? Because one of our kids is really private, and it's just a way to respect privacy. The other thing to respect is rules and values. How many of you are going to wait till your child is 13 before you get them a phone or allow them on social media? There are many times I've been in parent situations in when I used to go in big, auditoriums with parents, and there was always a couple of parents who said, I feel like I'm the only one. I can tell you right now, you are not. And I can see even by the people raising their hands and commenting here, some of you are going to wait, right? And it's okay if you're not. It's okay if you're not. But here's the deal. There will be kids who are allowed and kids who are not allowed to have the phones. And if communication among friends starts happening through text group chat and somebody's going to be excluded from that, please encourage your kids to find other ways. They can do the text with the friends, but make sure they are thinking about not excluding others at the same time. Eventually, everyone's going to have a phone. It's just during that awkward period where some have one and some don't. But let's have those conversations about different families having different rules and values and respecting those differences. Okay, and the last one I like to share, again, this came from a parent long ago who said to me, my daughter was so upset. She texted a friend and the friend didn't text her back right away. So she was very distraught. She thought, oh my gosh, she's so mad at me. I did something. I'm not sure what did I do? She just fretted for an hour about this or more. It turned out her friend was simply doing something else, like with family members. So I think we have to remind our kids that just because you're online doesn't mean they are online. So you've got to kind of respect that you're existing online, maybe at different times in different ways, and that's okay. But we should always encourage kids to be kind and respectful, and talk to them about being kind and respectful as a superpower. Because when we use kindness and respect, amazing things can happen. So talk to them as if they love the whole Marvel superhero universe. I think it's a great way to talk about it with kids. Finally, I want to just talk about kindness inward, and that is that kids need to understand that their value is not equal to, especially those who begin using social media, you're not equal to the number of likes or followers or retweets or comments or whatever of their posts. I know that many, many teens get really hung up on this and they compare themselves to others. Why is that person getting more likes than I am? We as parents, if we're going to allow them, and at some point we know they're going to use social media, it's going to be a part of their lives, but as they go through that process, build them up in other ways and remind them constantly that their value is not equal to those things, because a lot of those things are not in anyone's control necessarily. All right? They're greater than the value of those things. Unfortunately, we are living in a time where everyone's trying to chase being viral, getting all those likes and everything. And I think we need to step back and have conversations as families about what's really important. Because a lot of those people who are viral, it's not even real. It's very staged. And just we need to have those conversations as families. And ways that you can support and nurture kindness is be there for them, as I've said before. The second point on being prepared, these are two questions that I would love for you to think about. No need to answer now. And that is, here are the two questions. What would you do if your child ever experienced bullying online? What would you do? Think about that. Be prepared for that question or answering that question, and hopefully you will never need it. The other question is, what would you do if your child was the one who was unkind to someone else online? Again, no need to answer here now, but think about it, be prepared for it, and hopefully you will never need to go back to that answer. I just really recommend that people think about this, because what we've seen is in instances of bullying, there's so much shock and disbelief and denial, pain when it's their child being bullied and so on. Now in the schools, hopefully they're doing more around, discouraging that behavior and encouraging what it means to be a good friend, what it means to be a good fellow classmate. But we as parents can do our part by being prepared and having these conversations with each other parents in the same communities. Finally, when you see that story on your Facebook or Twitter or Instagram feed, when you see that story that makes you go, oh, I knew the world wasn't all that bad. I knew there were still good people out there. When you find those stories, share them with your kids. Tell them those stories so they know that good happens online too. Finally, on being savvy, the good habits and good uses. So I have to start with this one because it just happened today. Maybe some of you knew this story, and if you didn't, you can all go searching online for it. This was scrolling across my feed, Twitter, like a million times today, and I in fact shared it myself. Maybe some of you saw this story online and maybe some of you didn't, but this is a screenshot of a live, it was recorded. It was actually a court hearing with lawyers and a judge. And one of the lawyers must have been gotten on the computer after his child did, because the filter on Zoom still had the cat face on it. And he continued to talk with this cat face on it for this real hearing. But if you go look online about it, it's really hilarious. But the lesson learned is here: good habits and good uses. Before you get on any screen, on any video chat, make sure the security settings, your audio settings, you've checked all of that before you go live. I just thought I'd share that because it was brand new and going really crazy on the internet today. But when we talk about encouraging good habits, I have a question. How many of you have looked yourself up on the internet? Have you ever looked up your own name on the internet? What did you find? What did you find when you looked yourself up on the internet? Many times we find a lot of people who share our names. Okay? And sometimes we find us and something that's out there in the public. If you have not ever looked yourself up online, I highly recommend you do it and see what you find. I have asked this question of students before, and it's interesting. A lot of them have done it. And many times they find themselves on the internet, something, it's truly them and it's public. And thank you for sharing that you found people that you're not related to, but have, I guess, your same name, same last name. Yeah, you never know what you're going to find. So it's a good habit to do, and you don't need to go searching yourself all the time. You can actually use something called, if you use Google, which a lot of people do, it's called Google Alerts. Whoops. And you just simply go to Google Alerts, or sorry, google.com/alerts. And it will bring up a page for you where you can enter a phrase or your name or your child's name or whatever name you want to put in there. And anytime that something is posted online with that name or that phrase that is public on the internet, you'll get an alert. And you can choose it as it happens. You can get an email weekly. It's up to you how often you want the information. The reason I bring that up is because you want to be able to, and your children should be able to, in their future, if they're going for a job or applying to a college, if they have to know, oh my goodness, there's somebody who's really famous out there with my name, I should be able to explain that's not me, right? Or they might find something that's public out there and they don't want it public out there. And I had a situation when I spoke with high school seniors. A woman said that a young woman told me she found a picture of herself that was not very attractive, posted by a fellow classmate, meant to make her look bad. And so she asked him to take it down. She reported it to the service to take it down. But had she not looked, and she was in the process of applying to colleges at the time, I have no idea what would have happened to her. Okay. It's just a good habit. Here's another reason. We've been following the Kaplan Institute since, gosh, it's probably been 6, 7, 8 years now. And their most recent study just came out last month. So this is brand new data. They interview these college admissions officers all across the country. And I know many of you have children that are a little bit young, but some of you do have older ones. And one day all of you are going to potentially consider this. But it turns out that they asked the question, do you feel it's within your right to look up that student online beyond their application? Would you look them up? Would you want to see what you find? So this number keeps on going up. Last year's number was 59%. This year it's now 65%. So we know that there's great interest to see what else out there about them. But here's what's here's another part of the data that's interesting. 50-some%, 58%, said, oh, I kind of found some stuff that I'm not too impressed with, so I'm not sure about this candidate. I'm not sure about this student. But the number that's been rising is the one in green. 42% have said, I found some really good stuff, and that's really changed, that's really put them in a further down the category of, yes, we should absolutely consider them. That is very interesting to me. And that goes back to the point I made earlier, which is we want to help our kids be safe. We want to teach them how to be kind and how to use everything in a way that's going to be beneficial to them. And so a lot of times that means putting privacy settings, not doing certain things, basically hiding. But we don't want them to be completely invisible either. And what I mean by that is, what about the 42% who are looking for the positive things. And this is where mastery comes into play. How are we encouraging our kids to use the internet in ways that could be good for them, for others, for their communities, or for the world? Well, it turns out there are many ways we can be doing that, even at young ages. You know, if they're volunteering for a cause they really care about and raising money for it, it could be something they're using, social media to raise awareness for. Maybe they've won awards and accolades, and the school paper has decided to publicize that. Maybe they're really great at sports or at singing or acting or some other kind of performance art. There are great websites that allow kids now to showcase that kind of thing. Maybe they're a great writer and they start a blog, or a photographer and they also start a blog to showcase that kind of work. But other ways, some people have said to me, my child loves making videos, but they're not old enough to have their own YouTube channel yet. Well, my recommendation is there are great contests out there that they could direct that energy to. If you look up video contests for kids, you will find lots of them. Maybe they won't win a prize. It doesn't matter. It's a great experience for them. They learn how to work with rules, towards a deadline. They're challenged by whatever the criteria of the contest is. It's a wonderful example. And frankly, they could build up a repertoire of everything they've ever entered. Maybe they didn't win, but it's a great experience and a great use of, I think, their energy online. On that note, for those of you, maybe they're great at making videos or they just want to help their school. I do want to talk very briefly about a contest that we just launched. Today is Safer Internet Day. It was celebrated in 170 countries around the world. And this is the day every year we launch our contest for students and schools. It's called What's Your Story? And every year we ask a question that kids have to answer in 2 minutes or less. And they can do it with your help as parents. It could be something they do together with their teacher in school. The grand prize is $10,000. We've been doing this since 2010, and it's one of my absolute favorite things to do. So for all of you out there who have access to your school administrators, we'd love to see as many kids as possible participating. Our winner last year was actually from Hawaii, but we've had winners from all over the country in the past. So it's just an example of a way to direct some of that online time for a good cause. And the question this year is, how did the internet help you get through this past year? We really want to hear from kids, their perspective on this question. Go to whatsyourstory.trimicro.com if you would like to see more information on eligibility, how old do you have to be, and so on. For those, I will just say they can enter on their own if they're 13 and above. Between the ages of 13 and 17, it will trigger a permission email for the parent to say it's okay. If they're below 13, then the parent has to be the one to register, or a teacher has to register on their behalf. But anybody at any age can participate. They do need to be students. So if they're in any kind of student, all the way up through college even, and there are different prizing categories. So have a look. You can see all the past year's winners too, to be inspired. Just wrapping up here then, as you as parents, I really appreciate you staying with me for as long as you have. I do hope you found today helpful. And there are some ways that you can continue to stay active as parents who are trying to not only raise great digital citizens, but through a very, very challenging period of history. Talk to each other in your communities. Have gatherings about these topics regularly. Don't just come to sessions like tonight and end there. Make it a constant part of your conversations at the dinner table or with each other. And again, I'll show you some ways that you can stay up to date. I do this presentation probably every couple of weeks, and there's always something new that I'm sharing. So a year from now, this presentation will look very different. There'll be new apps, there'll be new issues, there'll be new challenges. And so I invite you to make it a yearly event if you like, but stay up to date. I will pause here for questions. If you are listening in Spanish, please go ahead and submit your questions in Spanish through the Q&A, and I'll be happy to speak to Gigi, who is our interpreter, about it. Any questions at all? Okay, I think there's one here in the chat. I haven't seen too many. Okay, nope. All right, great. So when you close out, what's going to launch is a feedback form. And I would really appreciate you, it's very quick, 3 or 4 questions, very quick. If you'd like to go ahead, answer that, but leave your email, if you choose to leave your email address, then, if I can get to the next slide, you will be entered to win one of 5 copies of Trend Micro Maximum Security. It's actually, I think it covers up to 5 devices in your house, including cell phones. So again, no obligation. You can leave your email address or not in the feedback form, and you will be eligible to be one of 5 people to get a copy of this product. I leave you with some resources. This comes from PTO Today. They have some great documents like an agreement that you could sit down with your child about as you're setting rules about use of technology, FAQs, sort of other tip sheets. And that's on the URL that you see at the top of the page. But also we have resources at internetsafety.trendmicro.com. Lots of them. They're actually available in 10 different languages. And then every other Wednesday, we've been hosting experts to talk about really specific issues. Our next one's actually tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time with Dr. Sophia Noble. But those happen every other week, and you can meet them, you can talk to them, you can bring your questions for them. I will leave you with, my contact information, and you can follow me on Twitter. I'm pretty active there, but my email address is here as well. Anyone who reaches out through email to me, or if you were working with one of our team members before tonight who actually sent you the Zoom link and got your community set up, you can also contact them. We will make the recording for tonight available to those who attended this evening for your community. We will continue to have these sessions twice a month. So if there's people in your community that hadn't had a chance to come tonight, they are more than welcome to come to any one of those events. The next one is February 23rd. That is 7 p.m. Pacific time though. And then the next one for the East Coast is March 9th. I think it's March 9th. But you can go again to our website, internetsafety.trendmicro.com/events, and you can see all of the dates that we're doing. Thank you very, very much for staying with me. I hope this was informative and helpful for you. I think there were some students on. I'm not sure if they were or not. And so to the students, I wish you well in the final weeks of school, final months of school, and hang in there. I know it was a tough year for all of us, but you got this far, so celebrate that. And one day we will all be over this, and I'd be happy to come to your communities in person. Thank you and good night.